The High Court in Pietermaritzburg is today expected to hear former President Jacob Zuma's urgent application for a stay of his arrest, pending his application in the Constitutional Court next week. Well, Zuma will approach the court in Pietermaritzburg in a bid to stop his arrest. This comes as he finalizes an application for the Constitutional Court to rescind his 15-month jail term for contempt of court. Last week, Justice Samkele ordered that Zuma had until Sunday to hand himself over to the police, failing which Police Minister Pietermaritzburg and the National Police Commissioner General Pietermaritzburg had until tomorrow to arrest him. In a media briefing at the weekend, the embattled former president argued that it was his right to choose not to appear before Judge Raymond Zondo at the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. Zuma reiterated his view that Zondo was biased against him. And the High Court in Pietermaritzburg is today expected to hear former President Jacob Zuma's urgent application for a stay of his arrest, pending his application in the Constitutional Court next week. Now, the Constitutional Court will hear Zuma's rescission application on Monday next week. It found the former president guilty of contempt of court and sentenced him to 15 months in prison. We now cross to our reporter Samkele Maseko for more. A very good morning to you, Samkele. Thank you so much for joining us on the agenda. I mean, this is one of the most important cases in South Africa's judicial history, as the outcome will be definitely a test for South Africa's constitutional democracy. So should the court rule in Zuma's favor, it will change the entire complexion of South Africa's jurisprudence, isn't it? So take us through what we can expect today.
Essentially, what we can expect today is that urgent application by former President Jacob Zuma for the stay in the execution of his arrest will be heard virtually here at the Pietermaritzburg High Court. We do know that the Helen Suzman Foundation and AfriForum and also the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, led by their senior counsel, Advocate Thembeka Toby, will be opposing that application by former President Jacob Zuma. We also do know that the Minister of Police, Pietermaritzburg, and also the Police Commissioner, Pietermaritzburg, through the State Attorney, have sent a letter to the Acting Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, in which they are saying that pending the finalization of this unique case that has been presented by this application by the former president, that they would be standing in abeyance and holding off the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma until these litigation proceedings are done, which have been set for the next 2 days, today and tomorrow. And also, otherwise, should the Acting Chief Justice Raymond Zondo issue an instruction from the Constitutional Court on what should happen to the former president. So at this point in time, the Minister of Police and the Police Commissioner are saying that they will not arrest the former president until these litigation proceedings in this court are done, or unless the Court says otherwise, then they will act.
But then does Zuma have a legal leg to stand on? In as much as he raised the argument of poor health and old age, he also raised the argument of gross irregularities in the fact that he was not afforded a chance, or he was not afforded a trial before that verdict was handed down.
What we do know as journalists, and what is reported and stated in the court papers of the former president, he is saying that it's due to ill health that he left the State Capture Commission of Inquiry to take his medication. He also goes further to say that his actions in this appeal or rescission that he is seeking at the Constitutional Court of the Court Act Rule 42, that the Constitutional Court verdict that he be sentenced to 15 months incarceration be rescinded, is due to the fact that he does not want this application to be perceived as another way of him trying to erode the authority of the Constitutional Court, but he sees that can the Constitutional Court please hear his case, and that he aligns himself with the minority judgment that the 15-month jail term sentence was too harsh, and that even though he was in contempt of court, he should not have been given such a lengthy jail term, as that is unconstitutional and that has trampled upon his civil rights as a human being in the Republic of South Africa. He goes further to say in those court papers that he essentially will abide by any decision that is made by the Constitutional Court, but he seeks one last attempt, even though the Constitutional Court did give the former president ample time to file his own responding affidavits in the form when the first case was instituted by the State Capture Commission of Inquiry after he walked out of the commission, and the commission wanted the Constitutional Court to have an order to compel the former president to come to the commission and answer all questions. The former president still did not go. When a judgment was then given that the former president must then be incarcerated, he then saw that when the former president saw that the Constitutional Court is saying that he must be compelled to answer all questions, he then said that he will have no further part he will play or even go to the Constitutional Court anymore. But until the 11th hour, when the judgment was given that he must be incarcerated, the former president then consulted his lawyers, and his lawyers then came up with, and through their brilliant legal minds of Advocate Dalimpofu, they were able to see a loophole in the court rule of the Constitutional Court, in the Rule 42, that allows and argues for a rescission of the judgment of the Constitutional Court, which they have then applied. But then now today, it comes to whether this Divisional High Court of Pietermaritzburg, does it have the jurisdiction to overturn a decision of a higher court? We do know that in the State Capture Commission of Inquiry papers, they are arguing that a lower court does not have the necessary jurisdiction to overturn a decision of the higher court, which is the same argument that is being portrayed by the Helen Suzman Foundation and AfriForum.
Yeah, and it begs the question then why he was allowed to make that application in a much lower court to rescind the judgment of a higher court. And if it does indeed, or if the court rules in Zuma's favor, it will certainly erode the integrity of the Constitutional Court. I mean, being the final arbiter of each and every case here in South Africa. And, I suppose then it'll start a legal precedent, and some other people will ask the Constitutional Court to turn away certain judgments.
In a way, many of the people we have spoken to are saying that if Samkele Maseko were to be picked up on the streets of Long Market here in Pietermaritzburg, if, God forbid, he was involved in any form of litigation and there was an adverse finding against me, I wouldn't get a second opportunity or not even a second opportunity, a third opportunity to go to the Constitutional Court, or to have the Minister of Police and the Police Commissioner Kehla saying that they are going to stand down on my arrest on the virtue that I have applied to rescind a particular application. Those people that we've spoken to are saying that the laws of this country are not being obeyed on the virtue that it is a senior politician and a former head of state that they are dealing with now. Issues that have been raised by many legal analysts as well, saying that this is an unprecedented and unique case which essentially looks at the authority and may erode the authority of the Constitutional Court depending on the decision that the ConCourt takes. And if the ConCourt were to rescind its decision, would seriously hamper and damper the authority of the Constitutional Court. But I'm no legal expert. I wouldn't know the total effect of whatever decision is made by this lower court, by this high court in Pietermaritzburg, whether it decides to rescind a decision of a higher court and its total implications. Lawson Naidu may be able to provide further clarity on this point, because he even tweeted over the weekend that it does not mean that with the Constitutional Court saying it will hear the rescission application by the former president, that he no longer has to report to a correctional services facility. That was further amplified by that letter by the state attorney on behalf of the Minister of Police and also the police commissioner, that they will stand down for now in the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma on the virtue that there is a unique case here at the High Court in Pietermaritzburg to stay the execution of the former president's arrest, and also the second-pronged approach by the former president to go to the Constitutional Court to try and rescind that judgment sentencing him to 15 months incarceration.
All right, Samkele, all eyes are on the Pietermaritzburg High Court today to decide on this very, very important matter. And before I let you go for now, what's the mood there? Are you seeing, the high number of supporters we've seen at Nkandla over the past weekend?
At this point in time, there will be no numbers of supporters coming to the Pietermaritzburg High Court, as this is a virtual sitting. It will be argued on a virtual platform, and there will be no leaders of the governing party or those who are supporting the former president who will be coming here to the Pietermaritzburg High Court. We do know that our colleague Samkele Maseko is in Kwatagatunusa in Nkandla at the homestead of the former president, and he will be following proceedings from there. We do know that the disbanded MKMVA, dubbed the toy soldiers, are outside the former president's home and protecting him. We've seen them calling themselves the Nkandla Protection Detachment of MKMVA.
All right, Samkele Maseko will be coming to you in the next hour. Thank you so much for your update. That was a reporter, Samkele Maseko, outside of the Pietermaritzburg High Court, wherein the rescission case of former President Jacob Zuma will be heard.